like to call to order the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for the month of November 2007 at 7:32. Before I open up the floor for public participation, I would first like to welcome a new member to our board this evening, Ralph Ascatino, who was just recently elected to the Board of Finance. I'd also like to welcome back Mr. Kevin Moffitt to my right, Mr. Kevin Houlihan to my left, and Richard Zarena as the continued alternate on our board going forward. Welcome back, gentlemen. It's good to have you back. I'll open up the floor for public participation. There being none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the to elect a chairman and a vice chairman for the upcoming 2-year term. I'll open up the floor for nominations.
Well, I'd like to continue. I think we've had success the past couple of years. I think you've done a great job, Kevin, and I'd like to nominate Kevin McNabola to remain chairman as the Board of Finance for the next 2 years.
Okay, do I have any seconds?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, at this time I'd like to open up the floor for nominations for vice chairman of the Board of Finance.
Well, I'd like to nominate Kevin Houlihan for that position. I believe he's been in that position for the last couple of years as well.
I guess I'll second that.
Okay. First by Mr. Leahy, second by Mr. Ascatino. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on to item number 4, which is the discussion and possible approval of the minutes for the October 15th meeting, 2007. I'll give you gentlemen a few minutes to kind of review the minutes, take a look. Any changes or adjustments to the minutes?
Just for the record, I did mention one before the meeting started to Deb. It's on the second page, third bullet from the bottom. In the bullet that says Ms. Mangini, that word should be in the second last line, best practice, singular. So I apologize for giving the wrong information to Deborah.
Okay. Any other changes or amendments? John? None? Anyone else? Okay. There being none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes with the changes and adjustments as read.
All right, motion.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Moffitt. Do I have a second?
Sure, second.
Second by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Well, I think
One abstention?
I'm abstaining too because I was.
Okay. All right. For the record, 2 abstentions, Mr. Houlihan and Mr. Ascatino abstain.
I don't know if it's what the issue is, Kevin, with agendas and all, but I'd just like to commend, since we're on the minutes, Deborah for continuing to improve the quality of these minutes. She gets the minutes from other meetings and follows what she feels looks good, and has developed her own style in that process, and I commend her for that. Thank you, Deborah.
All right, great. For the record, the motion passed 4-0 with 2 abstentions. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 4, which is the discussion and possible approval of some fiscal policies that I've asked our treasurer, Al Sharonzelli, to give us an update on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Evening, Al.
Yeah.
As you may recall from some earlier discussions we had last year, we are endeavoring to get our bond rating picked up to a tick. We're currently a AA2, and we would like to be a AA1. We would very much like to be a AA1. Part of that process, we have systematically, Pam and Kevin and I, gone through the requirements of Moody's and requirements of some of the things that we have to do, and some of the negative comments that we have had in previous audits. One of the issues that has stuck out all the way around is investment policies. What I'd like to do is I'd like to turn the order of these around a little bit if I can. Sure. And I'd like to start with the investment policy and practice because that's the most innocuous of them. And I think it's going to be the least, require the least amount of discussion on that. What we are doing right now, and this is a perpetuation of a policy that was begun many years ago by Mr. Williams, who was a longtime treasurer here and was for some reason abandoned over the past couple of years, but we are now trying to get that back into place. All of our investments are cash and cash equivalents. We are using right now as our primary investment vehicle the short-term investment fund from the State Treasurer's Office. That pays really the best interest rates on the block. They're ballpark 40 basis points ahead of the 90-day T-bills and about 40 to 45 basis points ahead of the historic certificate of deposit yields. So we're using that for the bulk of our deposits. It's instantly liquidity. The instant liquidity of that is a major factor. I can wire the money from that account back to our operating account with a day's notice. The same thing with the other two banks that I use as holding funds for current money. And there are two current banks that are housed in town, both very solid banks, TD Bank North and Commerce Bank. Unfortunately, they've just merged, so we may now have to look to a third bank down the road, but nonetheless, that's what we've been doing in the past. The main objective of this policy is to keep the liquidity of our investments, because you never know what you're going to need. We don't know how we're going to need it, and putting the money out over a longer period of time is not going to necessarily give us a greater yield than we have right now. So at any rate, that policy, I think, is the least contentious of the policies that we're looking at. I throw that out for any questions or any arguments or discussions that we might have on that matter.
John?
Just a couple of minor things, Al, and you've already touched on it. TD Bank and Commerce Bank are merging or whatever. So do we have to actually spell out the names of the bank?
No, we don't.
I was thinking maintain that one bank that functions as the principal day-to-day, and then secondary investments are held at three other
local banks.
Otherwise, we could be changing this all the time.
That's right.
The names.
That's a very good point, John.
Yeah.
Really, this was more informative at this point and that's why we're here today. But that point is well taken. And we will, by my standards, we'll have to pick up another bank. What I've done is at this time of the year, our tax receipts slow down, so I need to move money from current investments into current operating, and the money has come from TD Bank North at this point in time. So that account is down to lower than it had been, and we'll continue to keep those in balance until we find out which one is the survivor. My guess is that it's going to be TD Bank North, because they're the bigger of the organizations.
And then my other question, maybe this was just informative too, the very last paragraph where it starts with "this fund has outperformed similar funds." See that? Do we actually need that whole sentence there?
No, not really. No. That again is informative. That's why I'm going with stiff.
Right. Kind of gives you a comparison look, you know.
And Connecticut statutes will allow us to invest in cash, certificates of deposits, municipal notes and bonds, the United States of America, including T-bills. We can do federal home loan bills. I don't like any of that. I just don't like it, especially in this market.
John, why?
Cash is king.
It's kind of risky. Yeah.
Cash is king. There's no substitute for cash in the bank. If you can get enough of a decent yield by wielding a large enough stick, then cash is the way to go, and we got a pretty good sized stick here.
John, why do you wish to take out that last sentence in the last paragraph?
It talks about
The
this
rationale.
fund, the rationale for it, and it's averaged 40 basis points. Well, that's probably as of right now, but if this policy is a year from now,
Changes,
that,
right.
Yeah.
So I'd rather see it more generic. I understand what he's doing. I'm not questioning what he's doing. I'm just thinking it should be more generic.
You know,
Same
you
thing
can
with
even
the
just make it
banks.
say it's outperformed.
Right.
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 You know,
Yeah.
just to change the wording, you might just say outperformed instead of, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense.
But yeah.
Any other issues on that?
Well, that looks good.
All right, we did go with, just a word on that. I think somewhere in your packet, you've also got a Fed funds rate graph on
Yes.
that. I'm sorry to say the last two meetings have yielded a little bit of a downturn in that. I'm hoping that when they meet in December, and Rich could probably give us, shed a little light on this, that they're going to stay where they are, please, for a while. You know, I don't think they're going to drop another point, another quarter of a point. I sure don't think they're going to drop another half a point. We're fortunate in Orange in that we're not, for our investments and really for our, particularly for the sale of our bonds, we're not subject to subprime mortgages here. So that's not an issue with our borrowing per se, which is really what this is all tied into, this whole process. Having said that, the next two are probably more argumentative. I hate to use that word, but there's more options in the nature of them.
Kevin, are we going to vote on these things?
At the end.
At the
Yeah,
end?
we'll go through them and discuss them after
Not one
when
by
Al's
one.
done, and then we'll vote on it.
The
Yep.
fund balance policy and practice is the next thing here. I had originally wanted to see this number at about 15%. Bond counsel said they thought that was a little high, so we went in at 10. After our meeting with Moody's today, both Pam and I think that we should be closer to that 15% number. Again, we're AA2. We want to get to AA1. I have a whole anthology of information from Moody's describing the various towns that are participatory or that are classed under AA1 and AA2 in Connecticut. And their fund balance numbers are in between that 12.5% to 13% range. So just to put it in real numbers, based on what we're looking at for the audit, and of course this is unaudited and caveat, 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 but we're looking like we're going to have about a $9.6 million fund balance at the end of 2007. That $9.6 million right now translates to about 18.9% fund balance, general
That's
fund
correct.
balance, which is a fairly nice number. Moody's would like to see us not dip into that number to any great degree, and I think that's understandable considering what they're looking to do with our rating. We will be the second highest from the top if we can get our AA1. So that's a really good
Right.
move.
And they also look favorably upon a higher fund balance where we're at right now, which is, you know,
Yeah,
there's no detriment to having a higher fund balance event, and it helps you as far as the rating goes.
The thing that I would like to see the town of Orange do, and I certainly, this is my professional opinion, is to establish a fund balance base that we do not go below, rather than to utilize fund balance to offset current budgetary expenditure. The worst thing that any municipality can do, in my humble opinion, is to utilize fund balance for recurring expenditure. Because once you do that, you are then faced to having to do that same thing in the next year. So let's say, for sake of argument, we took $1 million out of fund balance and used it in the budget, we would begin next year with $1 million hole that we absolutely have to make up. Not only do you have to make it up, you've now established a trend, so you would have to put in another $1 million to cover the fact for any increases that occur. So that's something that I really think the Board of Finance should consider and should be aware of.
No, I think, yeah, we've gone that route, and we haven't, this board's never done that, used fund balance for recurring expenses. My question is going from AA2 to AA1, like you're saying Moody's would like to see it stay at 18.6, but maybe there's capital projects that we want to use. Can we quantify what that savings is based on what our current debt load?
Well, it's really hard to know, because they're
Okay.
not going to refinance current debt. It's new debt that'll come out at a lower rate. It's analogous to a FICO score as an individual. So if you have a high FICO score, you're going to get better rates on your credit cards, on your personal loans, on your automobile loans, or whatever type of borrowing that you do. If you have a lesser FICO score, you're going to pay higher interest rates. So this is going to give us an opportunity to pay less interest rates on our next borrowing and when we go out, and subsequent borrowings.
Okay, Al, but we still have to quantify this. If I was borrowing $10 million, $50 million, pick a number, and we were borrowing it today as AA2, what was the rate? And if we're borrowing it at AA1, what's the rate?
Could be a quarter of a point, could be 25
Okay.
basis points.
And
again, it
is
depends
anybody
on the
quick
time.
at this to tell me, Richie? What does a quarter point mean over whatever number of years? I mean, that's what we need to know. I mean, and I'll be happy to run it. I won't be able to do it as quick as some other
Well,
calculations.
a quarter of a point for $10 million for 1 year is $250,000. So if it's ongoing, and it's over a 10-year period of time, it's a significant amount of money.
Okay, so now we can at least say it's,
Yeah.
we got an idea.
I mean, you're not talking chump change here.
Right,
We're talking,
yeah.
Okay.
and we're also putting ourselves in a position, or the town would be in a position, to facilitate its borrowing process. Now, a AA2 is not bad. That's a very decent credit rate.
Now, the second piece of data, that's the first piece of data, I appreciate that, Al, and your thoroughness is not surprising to me. But, AA2, do we have towns, and do we have what their fund balance is?
Yes, we do.
Could we share in
also
something for
have-
AA1?
I'd be more than happy to give you that information. The yellow clip is the AA2s, and the green clip is the AA1s.
Am I
I'd be
getting paid
more
for
than
being a
happy to
straight
share
man
that
here?
with
I didn't know that.
Okay, we got it covered.
All good.
It's also oddly enough, Jim, that the green clip has green highlighting on it. This is right up his alley.
Yep.
And the yellow clip has yellow
I gotta
highlighting.
get my markers out.
So, you'll see where orange is on the far right-hand side of this, and what the median and mean are for all these towns as we go forward. I don't mean to say that we need to stay at 18.9% fund balance, but we need to have a number below which we don't go except for extreme emergencies. I'd like to see that number somewhere in the neighborhood of 12.5 to 15%.
Right.
Just from a practical standpoint, because we could safeguard our fund balance.
But, okay, this does, oh, okay, here it is.
Look at the first
here.
page. It's got the mean and the median fund balances for AA1 and AA2 on there. The front page.
Yeah, I was looking at the other, where's the town? Oh, here, okay.
Town of Orange is all the way to the right, Jim.
No, I have that, I was looking for other towns.
On the bottom, there's a name of each,
Yeah.
numbers and names of each town on the bottom of the first page in Connecticut that fall into those bond ratings.
And how do I tell the other towns' ratings?
Each one, well, they're all the ones in the yellow sheet, if you will.
Yes,
The names on the bottom are AA2s.
AA2s,
Brookfield,
okay.
Guilford, New Fairfield, North Haven, Trumbull.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rich. And then on the green highlighted list, which we will, for lack of a better phrase, call the green list, we're talking about Farmington, Readington, Woodbridge, Glastonbury, Simsbury, Easton, Madison, and Wallingford
Okay.
as AA1s. We would like Orange to be in that list, very much. We would like Orange to be in that list. But we have no reason not to
Fund
be.
balance,
Absolutely.
max.
And Jim, the backup pages actually
Yeah.
describe each town.
So if I'm looking at the AA1 and just eyeballing it, general fund balance as a percent of revenues, the second line, they range between 10.4
And 17.
and 17. Woodbridge is 14.7. Okay. And AA2s, whoa. Branford must be wanting to go up too, huh, Al?
Depends on other things other than their fund balance.
There's other factors.
So this
Oh,
is
is that-
only, this is one of the
They're at
factors.
18.3.
Right.
Which
There's
makes
just-
them look
that's just-
like Alex Rodriguez for
That's,
Christ's
And there may be,
On a
as
good
Mr.
day.
McNabola said, other factors.
There's other
which we-
components that go into it. yeah.
Okay, so fund balance is just one, okay.
You know, their equalized grand list, their
Mhm.
projected growth, their economic development, all of those things are factors.
Great
We are
data.
right now in a position where those factors are very favorable for us.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Pretty comparable with Madison.
Madison's, right in line with Madison. Madison's a good target town for us. Good point, Ralph.
Wow.
He's liking that data.
Well, what are the other variables then, besides the fund balance?
Oh, God, there's.
Well, equalized net grant list that Al just mentioned.
Is that on this document
Debt
too?
debt service is a key, and if you look at the debt service side, I mean, our debt service is 2.8% of our budget. You know, their threshold that we were looking to put out there tonight,
Oh,
which is
okay.
7%, so.
There's per capita income.
There's per capita income,
there's
there's economic
unemployment.
factors, right.
Yeah.
Socioeconomic
So I gotta do more
factors.
homework here, is what you're telling me.
It's a lot of data, Jim, and I can put you on the project. if
It's
you
all
like.
good.
I mean,
I'm in.
to cut to the short version, Jim, Double A1 is better than double A2, and we need to be better than we are.
250,000 for each 10 million per year. All right, we'll keep that stat in our head.
I saw PowerPoints today that'll keep you up all night.
And they didn't have Jim Lee on the bottom of them either. At any rate, I think what I'm asking the Board of Finance to do is to help me with that decision as to what that number wants to be. I think the 10% indicated in the handout is a little low.
Yeah.
Based on our meeting today.
And what I've heard today, too, from Moody's, I think our town is in a really good position, in a financial position to possibly be upgraded. And I think 12% is probably a better number than 10, based on what I'm hearing on what the median fund balance targets are for towns that are AA1. I would be more susceptible to look at 12.
See, a 12.5% number, which was my low preference, would be $6,580,000. Our fund balance now is going to be $9,600,000. Gives us a nice cushion if we need to do some short-term capital projects that we would not necessarily bond for, that we could strive out of fund balance. Again, the use of non-recurring revenue for non-recurring expenditures is a good thing. The use of non-recurring revenue for recurring expenditures is not a good thing.
No. Al, is there any reason, as I was reading the draft town fund balance policy and practice, it felt like after I got through the second sentence, after the fifth line before you got to, it felt like I was ready to read, but it wasn't there, that rating agencies usually want. I mean, this kind of information, you didn't want to have that in the policy statement? Because as I was reading it, I was saying,
Yeah. See, I mean,
I
to
felt
me, that's,
like somebody must have skipped a sentence here.
yeah, to me,
You know?
that's like a given to me, so I'm not looking at it from the other side of the board, and that may well need to be in there, you know.
Yeah, what I think Al was trying to do is just basically summarize it on 1 or 2 pages. I mean, this technically could be 3 or 4 pages.
Sure,
but
we could
he
go-
wants to summarize it in a way that's understandable for us, and
It's,
I could get this on 1 page.
One other question, just at the top, where the town of Orange taxpayers adopt a balanced budget each fiscal year through referendum, shouldn't we say town meeting or a referendum? I know we haven't done it with
Actually, it's town meeting and- it's town meeting and referendum.
But
Could hit it.
we could go back to that at
I
some
mean,
point.
in lieu of the referendum?
No, or,
No, we're allowed to, I believe the charter allows us to adopt the budget at a town meeting, just for the past
So you want to say through town
10,
meeting
12,
or referendum?
whatever years it's
Referendum.
been. We've adjourned to a referendum,
Yeah.
but we don't have to.
Nice
Okay.
catch,
Yeah, that's it.
John. Very good catch.
thanks. Yeah. Okay.
I got a little thrown when you got into the 1 through 5s. Maybe we should have a high school English teacher here, but in lieu of that, it says to provide for the following, and then it uses the word provide again 5 times. So
I like the word provide.
I noticed
Al is a
that.
great provider.
I wanted to make it clear, Jim, that our intent was to provide.
He provided you these documents tonight.
You want me to eliminate the words "to provide"?
I think it's
did give it
redundant.
consideration, I must tell you. I did give that consideration, because it seemed redundant to me, but
It's redundant to me.
maybe I should say in accordance with the following.
Okay, if you would like. We would have saved,
Several,
in the spirit of E.B. Strunk, you would have saved 9 words here, or 8 words, if you put the provide once rather than 5 times, but I'm not going to get
All
in
right,
the way of
John.
progress here.
Okay, so we'll make those changes on that. All right.
and then the last is the debt policy. And
Town debt.
it would be well for us to consider establishing a ceiling for our debt policy. We have in the audit, and as part of the calculation every audit and every bonding session, an allowable amount of debt, a debt ceiling that's allowable based on state regulations and based on our information. I'd like to see a number that ties that ceiling and the repayment of that ceiling back to the operating budget, so that, you know, we're all here now, Orange is going to be here long after we're all gone.
Right.
And elsewhere. And I think it's incumbent on us to provide something, some way of a guideline as to future boards and future staff as to what's appropriate to do here. I'm saying 7%. That number's not etched in concrete, but I put that out as a number as to where we need to be. We are probably now at about
2.8.
2.8%
Right.
of budget. So this gives us a lot of room again, but it does put a ceiling on it, so that we're not going to just go bond.
That
You know?
includes all the Amity?
Amity is budgetary. Amity's
Amenities
debt.
built into the,
Amity's debt is
Yep.
part of their operating budget. So that goes in our general fund operating expenditure.
so that excludes the 2.8.
So this excludes the Amity debt. The Amity debt's covered under operating expenditure.
That's correct.
How about the WPCA?
WPCA is separate unto its own, and they have the ability to bond for $30 million. That, WPCA is very strong, town of Orange.
In that paragraph. In that paragraph, then, could we put, like you put for Amity, as part of the budget, could we put WPCA as
Yes, we
their
can,
own?
yes.
Just to make it clear, because your beginning paragraph does talk
Or
about
we say
the-
you want to say WPCA part of their operating budget?
Yeah. Just so we're clear,
Yeah.
it follows your first paragraph there.
And our Water Pollution Control Authority is very strong, very strong.
And then one other question I have for you, Al. The end of the third paragraph there, issued bonds shall include call provisions at par. Now, I know sometime in the past, in the long-term past, I guess some bonds were purchased and we couldn't pay them off earlier, so this will prevent us from
This will prevent us from
purchasing those
having-
bonds
That's
in the
exactly.
future.
Yeah, it'll prevent us from having to pay more on them if we pay them short.
Al, since we're on that first paragraph, what was that movie where they said you buried the lead? There was a woman who said, the guy said it to a woman, and when Harry met Sally, I think. It feels to me that the third sentence is the opening of that first paragraph. In other words, that is the statement that I think this thing starts to talk about.
I mean,
The
we're-
fact that we're part of the Amity school system, and in addition, we are part of this Water Pollution Control Authority, are subheads to some other grandiose thing, but I don't think that should start the first two sentences of this policy. In other words, I would say that from the third sentence all the way through the end of that paragraph is your first paragraph. And then what you have is the first two sentences there,
Paragraph 2
paragraph 2 maybe.
works for me.
Because
I
I
just
think
wanna
it
get
sets it up as to who we are and
Yeah,
what
I
our
want to get that
intent is.
verbiage in there so it's it's clearly understood that those are separate entities.
All good, it's just
Okay, good.
from a flow.
And that's fine, Jim, I appreciate that.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Now, on, in the third paragraph where it says, about halfway down, principal payments may be made in equal amounts over the term of the bond or in amounts that do not exceed the previous installment by more than 50%.
Right. So that when we structure the payments of those bonds out, we're neither front-ending the payments nor back-ending the payments, so that the payments have some sort of a reasonableness as far as their cost from year to year, which gives us budget stability.
Would that preclude us, hypothetically, we have this fund balance we have now from maybe
Paying off debt?
paying a $2 million, no, it wouldn't?
Paying
Okay.
off debt is not part of the budgetary process, so you wouldn't use budgeted money to do that. You would use windfall money for that, or you would use fund
Okay, so
balance.
this is only,
This is only to
I
keep-
got you.
This is for budget stabilization, that's the purpose of
Yeah.
that. So that we don't make significant payments in one year, or on the other side of the coin, make a lesser payment than we should make.
Right.
To artificially reduce the budget. It's going to give us some guidelines and operational guidelines going forward, which I think we're sorely lacking, quite frankly.
Okay. Any other discussion on this one? Okay, thank you, Al.
Al, great job, Al.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Now-
And gals.
As far as this goes,
I'd like to go back and,
are we gonna, or you go
I was
back,
going
or
to
we
go back
gonna?
and discuss.
Okay, and then I was gonna say, maybe have them redrafted. I mean, is this urgent for this evening, or?
I'd love to be able to call Moody's and tell them we adopted a policy.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
adopted these policies. Even if we're not adopting them in exactly the way they are right now, I can tell them that we've adopted the policies, and we're changing the wording, but there are no material changes in
Yeah,
the
it's just,
concept.
it's basically, yeah.
Because this is a big part of our credit rating.
Yeah,
Big problem.
and basically, this board and our first selectman has been basically operating under these guys for the last, guides of the financials for the last 2 years. Now we're just kind of formalizing and putting in writing as kind of a process and procedure, so that down the road, when I'm not chairman and Jim's no longer here, the Board of Finance and the government and financials still can operate. Yeah.
So we want to have a motion, is that what?
Yeah, what I'd like to go back and do is take up the first one that Al brought up, which was the town investment policy and practice, to see if there's anyone have any further discussion on this one. Before, I'm going to take up each of these individually as a vote, but is there any further discussion on the town investment and policy practice? There being none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
Well, I think we were going to go with John and Al's discussion. We're going to remove the names
Of the banks.
of the banks.
Can we
And we're gonna
And we're going to,
clean that last
do it
part
all
out.
at once?
no, we'll do them one by one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to remove that last sentence, 40 basis points,
Yep.
and just make it outperformed, the 90-day.
It's outperformed similar funds and outperformed the 90-day T-bill. We're just gonna leave it at that.
Right, exactly.
Okay. And we're just gonna take all the basis point nonsense out of there. That's
Yep.
fine. And then we will remove the bank names
Mhm.
from this, and we will say other local banks.
Yeah. Okay,
It's all good.
anyone,
In that case, I'll make the motion to approve the town investment policy and practice as amended.
okay, with the changes? First by Mr. Escatino, I have a second on that?
A second.
Second by Mr. Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Moving on to the town fund policy, fund balance and practice. The changes on that one, I think was up for discussion, but I'd like to see that number at 12%.
I think we should go with a 12 and a half.
12 and a half?
Just like the...
By your 13?
12 and a half. I support 12 and a half. Kev, you good with that? 12 and a half?
Nice round number.
All right.
And then I'll take out the in accords, Jim.
And in the first sentence,
Yeah, town meeting.
Yeah, we'll start, town meeting or referendum as required.
And you don't think that after that third sentence that we don't need something about the small sentence rating agencies look with great favor on, or something? I don't know. I'd like to tie in the fact that there's a reason for doing this, besides here's the 12.5%. And the reason for doing it is to save the money over here on the A2 to A1.
The only thing is that Moody's is going to read this.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be their,
Right,
I don't want
Good.
them to think that that's the only reason we're doing it.
right.
All right.
Because it's really good
Yeah.
business to do this.
I mean, we've been doing this for the past, 2 years. Now
All
it's
right.
just formalizing it, so. Okay, 12.5. Do I have any other changes or any other discussion
Yeah,
this time?
bring some of those provides back to Costco's provides column, and I'm
I'll
good.
take care of that, Mr. Leahy, and
Thank you.
your comment is appreciated, sir.
Okay. I'll
And
entertain,
well, the next time I get one of your charts, Scooch.
Next month.
I'll tell you, I'll make a motion to approve the town fund balance policy and practice as amended to the 12.5% and the provided eliminated.
okay. Do I have a second?
second.
Second by Mr. Houlihan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
We did get John's edit, right?
Yes,
Town-
we did.
Town meeting,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, the last policy to enact here and to adopt is the town debt policy in practice, which states a limit of threshold of 7%. As I indicated, we're currently at 2.8, so we're well below that. But it could,
The only question, why 7%? 1 at 5?
Well, 5, I think, would be too low, because a 5% would allow us only $2.5 million worth of bond repayment on a $50 million budget.
wow, that's kind of tight.
So that's a little snug.
Yeah, because that's,
Albeit
is
we're
7
not-
enough? Because, in the hypothetical situation, you try to think what can happen to the town, but a school could have a major problem. We have to,
Yep. And we may have to,
that would be,
the other issue,
long
too,
as
is
there's
that,
room there.
you can't override these policies by vote. You know,
Right.
they are, I mean, should we have to do that? They can be overridden.
Yeah, new board could
Yeah.
get rid of them, or, yeah, exactly. Or we
Um,
continue.
yeah, I suppose that could happen. Suppose that could happen.
And you need that an individual case-by-case basis.
So the 7%, Ralph, is a number it's a number that I think is a reasonable number based on where we are right now.
Based on the size of our budget.
We're at $1.8 million in repayment right now against this
Yeah.
$50 million.
I should have asked this earlier, but since we haven't voted yet. Total cost of annual debt service. Is that over here on our best practice, on our benchmarking data here that we got from Moody's?
Outstanding debt, direct debt is full value, debt per capita, debt burden.
Debt to service as a percent of operating
That's it right
expenditures?
That's
there.
it.
And we're at 2.8?
That's correct.
We're at 3.3 right now.
3.3.
That was 06, so 07.
Yeah. That's right, when we retired that other.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that, I think 7% gives us enough room to do any additional debt or any additional borrowing that we may need to do.
This is very good.
I don't know what the plans are for school expansions. I know we've got modulars right now that we're using over there.
Yeah, even with that,
Peck.
though, we should be in enough to cover that.
And that building, I think it was Peck, is the building that has the, we can go out one side
Right.
from that. So we actually was built for, there's like an end chase there for all the utilities and everything, so we can just go right out with another wing from that building.
We did.
You did?
Modular, yeah.
Actually,
Okay, can't do that.
both buildings have been added on.
They have?
Two out of-
Okay.
All done.
2 out of the
I've been
3.
off for 5 years, guys, you know? You guys
All right, any more
We've been
discussion?
active since you've been young.
Obviously, Ralph.
Any more discussion on this policy? Before
gonna
we,
change those paragraphs
Before we
around.
approved it and
Yep.
enacted.
Thank you.
And then we're going to take the WPCA and call it part of their operating budget as well, as we did with Amity.
Great data.
I guess if we're ready, I'll make a motion to approve the town debt policy and practice as amended.
Okay, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Moffett. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
you very much.
Thank you. You are fully enacted.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks for your work.
Yes, good job. All right, moving on to item number 6, which is the discussion and possible approval of transfers. And I believe Pam has one for us this evening.
That's correct. We just have one, and it's from Police Chief Gagné on behalf of the overtime for dispatchers. You may recall last year that we did come before you with an issue with this line item, and primarily the overtime expenses, the increase in overtime expenses were due to some changes in the contract that mandates dispatchers take overtime. While on one hand it is increasing the overtime costs in the dispatcher line item, it has significantly decreased overtime costs for police officers who obviously have a higher rate of pay. Chief Gagné and I have actually spoken about this, and during the budget process last year, it was still early in the fiscal year, and he hadn't truly recognized that this would be an ongoing problem until we were just about through the budget process. So while the 07-08 budget needs this adjustment, he is going to increase his request in the 08-09 budget. So he is able to take money within his own operating budget for this purpose.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on the transfer?
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer in the amount of $6,000 as listed on the departmental budget transfer request, and ask that that also be made part of the minutes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ascatino. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Next on the agenda item, we have item number 7, which is the discussion of the assumptions and guidelines for the 2008-2009 budget. And with that, we are actually plugging into the overhead.
think we can get this down to a few kids.
You can leave it down there, Jim, if you want.
Want me to?
Yeah.
All right. I don't think we want to do that.
It's yours.
Yeah, that's good. No, it should be coming up.
Takes a little while to warm up.
All right. Now we can do what, an F9?
Yep.
Something like that.
Control F8.
Yeah, that's great. Now we just have to get this projected. Okay, boss, who's got the,
These assumptions are in your packet.
It's usually good down here. Yeah. I know. I should have brought, I was gonna bring mine too.
Well,
It's usually done through this thing here.
Give it a shot, the old-fashioned way.
yeah, if it doesn't work, it's in, the package is in your packets here. We can go through it.
I'll keep playing with it. Why don't you guys go ahead? I've already read all this stuff. so-
Okay. All right. 2008, 2009 budget assumptions. You guys all have that in your PowerPoint packet. Basically, for the upcoming budget cycle, the assumptions that we've built into the 08-09 budget and also the three-year plan, which we're looking to utilize, accounts for inflationary rate factors. You can see I've broken them out here from 08, 09, 09, 010, and 2010 and 2011. These rates for standard inflation and medical inflation, which will be part of our calculation for the budget, comes right off of the governor's and Connecticut's budget as well, the standard rates that they use to adopt their budget. So it's the same exact rates that we're looking to use. Expenditures would be increased by inflation. Rates include discretionary spending, personal services, outside expenses, and grants. Equipment obviously is based on an out-year impact of either capital lease or lease purchases. There will be exceptions, obviously, to these inflationary factors that are built into our budget, including salaries, utilities, oil, and gasoline. These expenditures will be based off of prior year actual and not prior year budgeted amount. So basically, when we put our budget together for next year for 08 and 09, we're going to take into account what the prior year actuals were and then look at the current trend of cost for oil and for gasoline and for salaries, which are actually contractual. Pam and Jim have done a great job of, for this past year, of locking us into contracts and rates that are favorable on the oil and gasoline side. So as we go into the budget cycle for next year, we're going to, and electricity as well with the UI agreement. That will play a key role in budgeting for next year. Negotiated salaries are actually, or salary increases are dictated by the current contractual arrangements. So as many of the members are aware, there's little latitude that the Board of Finance has on the contractual side for contractual salaries. Moving on to page 2, the 07-08 budget will continue to, I should say the 08 and 09 budget will continue to take on a zero-based approach, which basically is a justified of activities, justify your program, justify your budget from the zero-based budgeting perspective, which means basically from the ground up. Try and justify every expenditure within your budget. There will be exceptions, obviously, to the zero-based budgeting in that incremental basis, such as utilities, gasoline, and medical costs, which are held to a different standard. 1% increase is being recommended on all discretionary budgeting spending, and Pam has basically communicated this message that we have here to the department heads to kind of give them a heads up as they start formulating their budget for 08-09, that 1% budgets is going to be kind of the target for the discretionary spend. Departments must also prioritize for the coming year their capital investment projects. Obviously, those will be brought to our attention as well as the ad hoc planning committee, which roll those projects up. And a complete cost-benefit analysis for each significant new investment of capital for over $100,000 can be done very easily by that one-page analysis that I presented a couple meetings back, and we looked at last year and utilizing that. So we can utilize that again with Ralph's team, Ralph Okenquist, if he has any capital requests over that amount. And this is really going to be a culmination of looking at a 3-year budget plan going forward. We are actually going to roll out a 3-year plan using the 08-09 budget as our basis year up front. And the good news about that, in meeting with Moody's today, they looked upon us very favorably by having a 3-year plan in place and a 5-year capital plan in place. By us enacting that, as we did, looking at enacting that a couple months back, it's very favorable. So this year, for sound investment dollars, we're looking to be focusing on sound investment for our taxpayers within this coming budget cycle for 08-09. And as I said, Pam has also taken a liberty of drawing up a 08-09 budget schedule for us on the 3rd page, which basically outlines all the dates for the upcoming meetings and for the budget formulation, budget submission to the first selectman's office, his approval, and then finally for us to kind of start reviewing the budgets in the first half of January all the way through March and April. So those are the dates. If you could take a look through some of those dates to make sure that there are no conflicts or big conflicts that many members of the board might have, that would be helpful.
March 17th.
Yeah, I was going to say
March 17th.
but I'd be willing to come here on St. Patrick's Day.
I don't know if I'd be willing to have you.
But the one I prefer to change is April 14th.
That is the national
Oh,
championship
right.
night? What
No, that is the
That's
day
a
before
day.
the tax deadline.
That's true.
That's also, I think, school vacation week, too.
Well, the way I looked at this,
I did check it this year. Yes.
Or you can meet with Alan. Or if you're still here at 11 o'clock, I'd be happy to join you.
I mean, we have the latitude to move a couple of these dates around, if you guys would like.
You're right, Kevin.
Pam, one of the things I was looking at was you had March 17th regularly scheduled meeting. We had March 19th Board of Finance budget meeting. We could probably have the Board of Education do their budget presentation as part of a regularly scheduled meeting. We could just put it on the agenda. I don't foresee a need to meet on a totally separate night. You know what I'm saying? If we're going to conduct business that week, or if we want to change the date from the 17th to the 25th and do all the regular business on the 25th and then have the Board of Ed present at the end or in the beginning, probably in the beginning would be better.
Kev, it feels, I brought this up another year, it feels like the OBOE budget seems to happen reasonably late in the cycle. For example, Dr. Brady at Amity will be giving the initial budget for 2008-2009 for Amity on January 16th. And
That's his initial
that's his
budget?
initial budget to presentation. And
Yeah.
they're looking to have that budget finalized for the Amity Board through the Amity Finance Committee February 4th.
Okay, which means that we can put them on one of our meetings for February 12th or February 25th. I mean, I'd actually like to have it before then, but
But here's the conundrum, the issue as I see it. We've got 3 pieces of budget going through the February, March, April timeframe. I wish I had it laid out in a chart. Next step. So, but they wanting to get, Amity is, like they basically approve, okay, here's what it's going to be for next year.
Mhm.
So we are still doing town budgets, still getting budgets from, so once that gets approved, we're kind of locked into that number.
Well, that's the key. I mean, I'd like to, I mean, depending on the timing of that, I would like to have this board review or have some insight into that budget as well. I mean, obviously, we can't, we can actually give our perspective on that budget, but until we
Well, that's
roll up
right.
all the pieces, I mean,
Well,
it's really three components. It's Amity, the
Right.
Orange Board of Ed, and then the town side.
Right.
So whichever order they're in, I mean, I think we're going to have a feel, maybe not a great feel by January on where the town's going to land, but I think directionally, I know, and this board probably knows where we want to land. So I'd like to have if the Amity board is going to be ready to present, or Dr. Brady is going to be ready to present sometime in January, I mean, I'd like to have him come before our board before he finalizes everything with his
Well,
board.
That's exactly one of the problems as you go through these budget things. All right, I just asked, we met this afternoon.
Yep.
So I had the good fortune of having most of them, rather than 2 Mondays, nights goofed up, I now have only one. January 16th, and the reason they're doing it on that Wednesday is I happen to be taking that next week off. They're going through their, what he calls the superintendent's budget. But what he wishes to do is have the Amity Finance Committee, basically I will cast a vote, on that superintendent's budget by February 4th. Now, looking at this data, and this is the same issue that happened last year, we're still in the process of juggling the town, and according to this, we're not going to find out what's going on with the Board of Education until either middle to late of March. So what happens is the Amity budget more or less gets set by that date. So our ability to influence it is way earlier than while we're still trying to juggle the other numbers in it.
Right.
And
That's
so,
why I'd like to have them come in earlier, if they're prepared to do that.
or we can go there, is what.
Well, either way, yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, then, it has to be sometime between January 16th and February 4th, per their schedule.
Correct, yep.
So, if you want to have Dr. Brady come, because he's planning on coming over to all of the towns.
Yep.
And he, in fact, now is going to get it into the bylaws of the Amity Board of Education, is that whoever the superintendent is, he must go out there and do that,
Right.
which I think is a great idea.
Right, yeah.
But going out there and doing it after you've already said, this has been approved by the Board of Education,
Mhm.
it's informational, but the ability to impact the budget is either limited or none.
Right. Well, we want to have our input. I mean, this board has the ability really to only make a kind of a recommendation on where they should land or where they should be. In the end, it's up to the Amity board and his team to kind of pass the budget.
All right,
So, but I would like to have him come, or we go there,
Two things
whichever,
for sure
January.
then. Everybody, January 16th, 5:30, Amity High School, if you wish to come. That's going to be the presentation.
Yep.
I will be for sure. Last year I ran down to Kinko's to get it all copied. I'm going to make sure that we get as much as we can electronically so we can distribute it electronically as well.
Mhm.
And then between there and when they wish to have this
Approved.
approved by the Amity Finance Committee on February 4th, which is not a lot of time.
Yep.
All right, we need to have, if influence wishes to be made on that budget, whatever it turns out to be, and by the way, everything is going very fine this year in terms of their budget. They are well under budget, as I'll report out next month. That's the window per their schedule, because they get a schedule that looks just like this. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's up on that.
Yeah, that works. That works
Okay.
for me. Yep.
Right.
Okay, anybody else on dates? Jim?
I just want to ask you, and I'm not walking up front, have you considered sending a representative, as you did years ago, next door to the Elementary Board of Education for their budgetary process?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have a representative
Just
there
to sit in on the
know what's
meetings.
going on.
Right, yep. Yeah, we,
You might find a member or an alternate that you can
absolutely.
put into that
Ah.
job.
That's a good recommendation. Take that, anybody else on the dates?
When do they start that? Do you happen to? does
The
anyone happen-
Board of Ed probably won't start, probably I would say late December, early January, Pam?
Probably early January.
Yeah.
I'm not absolutely positive. I haven't seen the schedule, but
And Jim, it really, I mean, they're on here from mid to late March, but technically, if they get done earlier, we can bring them in earlier. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, the timing of,
And we'll get numbers before then from them.
right, so,
I was able to stop home on the way to here, and I had asked Jack Levine to send the budget schedule. So I have that now electronically.
okay,
I get the sense that they start their budget cycle a lot sooner than the Orange Board of Education. So Jim, with your permission, I'd like to send this to you, because I guess it's or maybe Kevin, one of you two, to send it to whomever in the Orange Board of Education, so that they see another model of the universe as to when people start this. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you guys work
got
out. All right.
yep, absolutely.
So by looking at this, February 8th is going to be our tentative all-day meeting?
that's correct. As I indicated in my memo, the calendar was not truly cooperative this time around. So while I tried to mirror what you've done in the past, it is later than normal.
February 8th, it's fine. It's only like 4 days.
1 week.
Yeah,
It's usually
yeah.
like the first
February
or
1st
second.
last year, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure, or something like that.
Forecast snow for that day.
Hey, Rockaway, New Jersey, I feel like
Regular meeting.
And based on, Kevin, your comments with regard to March 17th and March 19th, and in view of the fact that we very well may have the Orange Board of Ed here even sooner, perhaps we can just work to change the March 17th regular meeting to perhaps March 24th, and that somewhere between March 18th and the 24th, if necessary, have a budget meeting.
That's fine,
Or
yeah.
perhaps you can even have the Orange Board of Ed at the regular meeting on February 25th.
Right.
If they're ready at
Right.
that point.
Okay, I think that's what we did last year. We had them at a regular meeting. Okay, any other changes? April 14th seems to be,
There seems to be some question about the school vacation, and I apologize in April if I picked that up incorrectly. Al Pullo was kind enough to send me the school calendar, and I thought I saw the school spring recess is April 21st, but Kevin and Rich are both telling me it's April 14th. So,
I can send you that, I have the calendar in my, at work, so I'll send you an email tomorrow with the actual date.
okay, that's helpful, and I'll double-check the calendar that was sent to me. Either way, I guess what we're looking at is the April 14th is a budget meeting, so we can easily adjust that. And we will look at the regular meeting that's scheduled for the 28th. We can possibly move that back to the 21st.
okay.
Okay.
That works.
I'll take another look at it, and we're doing this a little bit earlier this year, so I
Yes.
guess that's a good thing. We can take another look at it, and I can bring it back to you at the December meeting for approval, if that's okay with you.
Okay. All right. So on item number 8, would like to entertain a motion to accept the calendar, budget calendar, or budget schedule with the adjustments and that Pam has made.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Leahy. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Ascatino. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Item number 9 is the review and discussion of the 07-08 revenue and expenditures. Pam?
Okay, I have provided you with your monthly reports as well as the summary reports. And you also have the treasurer's report from Al Chiaranzelli, and he did, as requested, add the interest rates, the current rates on his report. I also mentioned in my monthly memo that I liked how Al was reporting the variance to you on his report, so I did, once again, adjust my monthly report to reflect something similar, as we truly are trying to make this as easy as possible for you as board members, and I thought consistency might be nice. So I hope that helped a little bit. We are meeting, on a side note, before we get into the 0708 budget discussion. We will be meeting with representatives from Phoenix tomorrow. Oh, and there's Kevin's, your PowerPoint appeared.
I know what I did.
There you go, there's the calendar.
We will be meeting with representatives from Phoenix tomorrow to discuss the schedule implementation of our software system upgrade. So as I indicated last month, I will keep you posted on that. With regard to the revenues and expenditures, we really are moving along quite well. We are very much on target with revenues, and as Al indicated in his report, the investment income is slightly above the target percentage. I did once again check revenue report against year-to-date last year, and for the most part, once again, we are very much on target. If you have any specific questions about any of the line items on the revenue, I'd be happy to address them now, or I'll just move on to expenditures.
The one that matters, of course, we've got 23 categories for 52 million, but one of them is 47.5 million. And so right now we're at 51.6%. What, do you happen to know, Pam, what we were approximately this time last year?
We were approximately at the same percentage, slightly lower actually,
Okay.
and our taxes for real property, personal property, and motor vehicle are all higher this year, collection rates, than they were last year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions on the revenue side? Anyone? No?
Okay.
Okay, move on to expenditures. Pam?
Okay, the expenditure report, while I provide you with the summaries, my focus, of course, is more on the detailed report. And I will just highlight a couple of areas that are reflecting deficits. One is, in fact, in the Selectmen's program under memberships, and that was a misposting, and a credit is pending. So there is like over $4,000 credit pending. It was charged to the improper account. And there are, I think, one or two additional issues very similar. One is on page 8. And it's under the Fire Marshal's Office for training. It is also showing a deficit, and again, it was simply a posting error that is being corrected. The nice thing about the changes in our office in the past year is that these reports are checked on a very frequent basis, at least weekly, and as a result, we're able to catch posting errors that obviously with this number of accounts and the numbers also similar, it does happen, but we are able to catch them very quickly, make the adjustments, and always have a really good idea of where we stand in each of these accounts. You will see a deficit a couple of lines up, and it's under special duty reimbursement under the Fire Marshal's Office. That account is not one that's utilized frequently, but it's very similar to the police extra duty account. It's payment of the town to employees that are working as doing fire watch duty that the fire marshal hires for, monitors, and in turn we actually bill the businesses. But again, this doesn't happen very frequently, so it's not set up as a separate fund like the police special duty. But we will be recouping the funds that were expended.
Pam, on page 10, under Public Works, sand and salt, there's an encumbrance in there for the full 70. We put a blanket PO in place for the...
That's exactly what that is. It's a blanket purchase order at this point.
Okay.
They are indicating, Public Works is indicating that they expect to expend all of those funds. The good part of doing that...
About $1 left over,
yes,
I
yes.
noticed.
The good part of doing that is it will prevent any requests for transfers out of that account, which we would not be doing at this point anyway, but I encourage them to use blanket purchase orders, and they've been a bit creative about it, but that's okay. We can easily decrease the amount of a purchase order. We can close out a purchase order when it's not being used.
And the 654 above that, is that like a misposting, or?
Exactly. That's a misposting that should be charged to an overtime account under roadways,
Gotcha.
and that has actually been made.
Okay. Under refuse, looks like we're 54% expended. Year-to-date, is that just because there's so many blanket POs?
That's exactly what that is. You'll note that there's a large encumbrance under residential recycling,
Yes. Yep.
as well as bulky waste disposal. There's a number of blanket purchase orders that have been set up. Overall, I think we've been very careful in our expenditures year-to-date, and we really are in very good financial shape at this point. I don't even think there's any other deficits to report at this point. So
No, yeah,
I'll be happy to address any questions.
yeah, it's early.
Pam, it's probably just an educating Jim question, but, you know, as we go through the two-pager, which you have to do manually, it does give us the opportunity to kind of just eyeball that expenditure,
Exactly.
you know, how high over, or basically a third of the year. So when we get down to town services and we see it at 85%, and it's not an insignificant amount of money, and then when you go to the detail, you see 125. What does that Racebrook track, 125,000, stand for?
Racebrook track is it's the actual purchase of that
The
area,
yearly
Jim?
encumbrance,
That-
it was a 12-year agreement paying off the Racebrook track, so unfortunately, you're never able to accumulate any extra money in that open space account because it was a 12-year agreement at $125,000 a year, and I think we just, this past year, I think we paid year
7, I believe,
think.
right.
Okay, so
That's correct.
going back to our percentages, once, we budgeted that, we paid
Paid
that,
it,
and so
exactly.
that's
That's-
the dominant number in that account.
That's
Okay.
what's so problematic with just looking at
Yeah.
percentages here, because a lot of things are paid at the beginning of the year,
Mhm.
some are quarterly payments.
That's a check that goes out July, right after the new budget.
That's correct.
I'm a little surprised debt service is the same way.
Those payments, some are in fact due at the beginning of the year, but they're due throughout the year.
Well, it shows here that it's 79%.
Yep.
Expended,
Yeah.
right. But there are additional payments that are scheduled to be made later this year.
No, but I would have thought debt payments would be kind of like my mortgage, you know, I pay it every month type of thing.
Yeah, they are not
They're
set
not
up that way, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions on the expenditure side? There being none? Okay, I will, at this time, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Escotino. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Moffett. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned at 8:40.